I'm going to kick it over to you, Ewok. Yeah, let's get into some of this HEX stuff. The question I had that we can get to maybe at some point is the eHEX versus HEX ratio and how eHEX is now starting to make a comeback unthinkable against HEX, which is interesting. Maybe we'll get there eventually. I don't know if we want to start there, but I'll throw it over to you, Ewok. What direction would you like to go with HEX?
Well, no, go ahead and it is a good place to start, I think, because it was, one of my topics that I had written down too. If Crispy wants to bring up any kind of metrics or anything like that, we'll give him a second to get whatever he wants loaded.
Oh, sure. Let me share the screen, then we can start. We can pop around, look at some different stuff. I'll share it over to you. I'm pulling up the T-share chart for Johnny Chaos.
I saw Johnny mentioned that earlier, and while you're doing that, I don't know if anybody I don't know if anybody acknowledged what he said is basically, though, you don't have HEX. Here it is. Technically, if your HEX is staked, you don't have HEX. You actually have T-shares. So you should look at the T-share chart, not the HEX one. So he does nail that on the head. When you're staked, your HEX is burned, as we all know. We're going to add this to the stage.
There you go. All right, so just let me know if you can see this well enough. Otherwise, I'll expand it and make it a little bit bigger. But just looking at the T-share rate, I have this up on the site now. I think maybe it was Johnny, somebody was talking about a few weeks ago. So I've added both of them to be able to track and just see what's been happening this year with the cost. This is in dollars, not in pulse. Just see where we are overall price wise. And so when I put that up against what I use the Mayer multiple a lot. So you can see, not optimized for this screen, but back since about that April timeframe, along with pulse and everything else, went way into the accumulation zone in reference to price. But in general, we just see that in dollar terms, it's been trending downwards with price because that's to be expected. But it's quite what's the right way to say this? It's not intuitive. It looks like it's cheaper, but it's getting more expensive in HEX. And so I've been beating the drum on both eHEX and pHEX, by the way. The idea that if you're interested in those protocols long term, now is probably the best time. Cheapest units and cheapest T-share costs to be able to get out there. And actually, people, I don't think they were listening to me exactly, but they did get out there and respond. We've got 40,000 T-shares on eHEX. Going out Quattro Cinco now, and 25,000, almost 30,000 on pHEX. So yeah, it's been quite a ride. So we have this core group of people, maybe about 1,500 users. Again, hard to count because we don't know, but that are actively staking long term and taking advantage. So in the run-up period, when prices went insane, many people would have looked up and said, "I wish I was a dolphin." Because dolphins were in a pretty good position, regardless.
Reminds me of a famous South Park episode, but
yeah, wow. It was a dolphin. But I mean, at this time, right? In 2039, if you look at the split and what the number of T-shirts are out there, it's less than $200 to be a dolphin. And so the longer this situation continues, for those who have very long time frames, plan to be around for the next 2 15-year cycles, the 15 and a 15 or something like that, God willing for them. It's a huge opportunity to be the whale, to be the dolphin, to be the shark way out there. And even if other people, because other people come in and jump on, by being involved long-term now, you maximize your ROI as compared to coming later. Because I do remember when it was almost $10,000 a T-shirt. So if I was coming in with fresh capital, I would have had to put $10,000 in to get enough HEX. And that could very easily happen again with a run-up. So in any case, I find it very, very reasonable right now.
And to be a dolphin at that point, I believe it was 1,000 T-shares.
Yeah, it was a little bit over 1,000. It's been coming down ever since,
So you're looking at $1 million to be a dolphin at that point.
Yeah, in fact, we can take a look real quick and see what the drawdowns look like. So if I look at the pHEX, for instance, this is not a prediction of be very clear what this is. Not a prediction of what we'll have for T-shares. This is what we have for T-shares in each year going out, right? And so I should say that I know the number. And so what I'm able to do is say, well, right now we have 9.1 million T-shares. So Poseidon right now is 915,000, right? Well, to be a Poseidon out in 2039 on the Pulse chain is 2,800 T-shares. And if you go all the way down to a Dolphin, it's less than 3 T-shares, in 2039. And so what we've seen is we have this opportunity. Again, people need to take care of their lives first, right? I mean, crypto's risky, so I don't think I'm giving any financial advice for people to go headlong into crypto. And you need to understand what you're doing short term and midterm, right? Because you have to have those goals. But it's also good to consider the long term. And if you're interested in the long term and you've got all your stuff covered, to me, it looks like a hell of a deal to get the most HEX possible by getting in now, because what you end up seeing with these, because you see how the numbers are laid out and they come down. And before I move off this, do you have any questions about this? It's just doing the standard calculation for us.
Well, so it was actually kind of part of a question that I had. How, with as we get closer to that date, obviously, you have bigger players that do their rolling short terms.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that affects it, along with the T-share rate at that time? Like how high do you think the T-share rate is predicted to be in 2038, 2039?
I expect it'll be 300,000 and ish on both chains. So
per HEX per T-share?
Yeah, HEX per T-share.
Okay.
And if you apply dollars to that, however you want to, that could mean that a T-share is $100,000. It could mean if HEX is $3, it could be $1 million for a T-share.
Sure.
I mean, there's some asymmetrical freaking possibilities here that none of us can control at the moment individually, right? But the idea that you could be locking in, reward levels, APR going out into the future, somewhere in the mid 20% range for the very long ones, rising over time. Because that's the other thing a lot of us forget. When we first get in, you have an APY, but your APY floats up as the payouts go up and the number of T-shares go down. And so, and I always think about what's it going to take for people to come in from traditional finance. And I think the higher the APR, the more interest there'll be, and it'll correct. Now, to your exact point about what will happen. So let's just assume we have the same kind of demand going forward, and for the moment, right? I think it'll change, but let's just assume. Well, then in 2040, you'll need 3 more T-shares to be a Dolphin in both those years going forward, until we run out of the ones in the front. And then the year after, if it was the same, you'll need 3 more T-shares. Not an incredibly hard lift, right? $200, right? I mean, it probably almost everyone, there's portions of the world that can't do this, but for at least in the West, almost everyone could get 200 in 1 year in. So there's an opportunity to really take advantage of that and become the larger holders in the future.